Well, this afternoon, thousands of federal workers in the D.C. region are unsure of the future of their jobs. A mass email sent to 2.2 million federal workers said government employees have basically 1 week to decide if they want to get with the program or hit the road, Jack. The Office of Personnel Management letter is offering deferred resignation, which means they put in notice of their resignation now, don't have to come to work in person, and receive full pay and benefits until September 30th. The letter also warns that the majority of federal agencies will be downsized, some even relocated, and there are no job protection guarantees for those who stay. By the way, those who do stay will also be subject to enhanced standards for suitability and conduct. The deferred resignation offer is not an option for military, postal workers, or those in immigration or national security positions. Obviously, we'll touch on that in just a minute. Meantime, President Trump has put an end to a long-standing policy that restricted federal agents from making immigration arrests at sensitive locations like churches, hospitals, and schools. That has concerned many. Joining us now to discuss this is Janae Addison, Fox 5 contributor right here on the Live Zone. Good to see you, Janae. This is a big story for a lot of folks.
Yeah, so right now the administration claims it's all part of an effort to go after members in the MS-13 gang who are known to recruit teenagers. Local leaders are being urged by advocacy groups to protect undocumented residents. We spoke to one of those advocacy groups earlier in the month. Here's what they had to say.
Right. We want to see Washington, D.C. We want to see Maryland and Virginia. We want to see the counties step up and take proactive legislative measures or executive measures to protect those areas and to protect the communities in their state and in their cities.
Obviously, yet again, a major topic, top of mind for a lot of folks. The question today is, how does the Trump administration really plan to enforce this?
So the Trump administration plans to implement the use of federal agents to go into these sensitive areas to make these immigration arrests. Obviously, there's a lot of concern from immigration advocacy groups about how this is going to interfere with day-to-day life. Yeah. The administration, in response, is saying these agents are going to use discretion and, quote, common sense to implement the measure.
Well, that's a question that we'll have to see unfold right before our very eyes. Yet again, Janae Addison joining us right here on the Live Zone. Thank you so much for that report. Staying in the world of politics, the confirmation hearing for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., President Trump's controversial pick to lead the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, now underway. Meanwhile, a federal judge yesterday temporarily blocked part of the Trump administration's plan to freeze all federal aid, a policy that unleashed confusion and worry from charities and educators, even as the White House insisted it was not as sweeping as it appeared. Joining us now to discuss all things politics, Mr. Sean Pittman, Democratic political advisor and author of Disaffected, back here on the Live Zone. Good to see you, Sean. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you guys. You know, I love how you say the name of that book, Disaffected. You do it so well.
Well, thank you, sir. Perhaps we need it. Well, we'll talk about it later. In this case,
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the major story of the day. We're talking about what's currently happening on Capitol Hill. Yes, the RFK Jr. Senate hearings that now are underway. Caroline Kennedy, the only living child of former U.S. President John F. Kennedy, in a video posted on social media calling her cousin, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., quote, a predator. We now know that if Kennedy loses 3 Republican votes, assuming that no Democrats vote for him, he will not be confirmed. Your thoughts on this thus far with regard to what you have seen during the confirmation hearings?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been it's been a movie, and somebody's going to make this movie probably pretty soon. Look, at this point, no Republican has come out publicly to say that they would vote no, right? I mean, we know a lot of them are still in the unclear sort of category, but none of them have come out to say no. I believe Robert Kennedy, when you look at that fact, has a strong chance to be the next HHS Secretary. We'll see what Republican senators like Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski do, but it's clear from even the confirmation of Pete Hegseth that the Senate is completely behind Trump, whether they're controversial picks or not.
Yeah, Sean, it was evident, though, that early on in the confirmation hearing, he tried to diminish his anti vaccine rhetoric and other controversial stances regarding public health in his opening statements to the Senate's Finance Committee, as he also faces a very contentious confirmation hearing. So the question is he just putting on a show?
Of course, it's a show. We know who he is. He's been a politician for a long time. You know, one of the things that's interesting though is this is the first time in history that that Democrats are against a Kennedy, and that is, you know, people are lost on that, but this is the first time, and they are together against him. I mean, you got 5 family members that have come out against RFK. You got over $1 million that's being spent on ads against him. He has been clear when he says no, there's no vaccine that's safe and effective. He said that in 2023. We know what he said about COVID-19, and even went far to say that it's targeting attacks on Caucasians and Black people. There was a journalist back in who you've heard that where Kennedy suggested to him in 2020 that his 6-year-old son's leukemia might have been attributed to polio and measles and mumps. To the vaccines for those, right? So this is a dangerous, you know, situation. We knew that RFK wanted to lead HHS when he stepped down during the presidential primary to endorse President Trump. We've been talking about it since then. This is why half of America is looking at this and saying this is a problem.
Yeah, I should make mention that so far during the confirmation hearing, it has gotten heated at some points, and we'll go ahead and take a look in later on in the show as to what is currently unfolding. Let's move on to the next big story of the day that will likely affect thousands of federal workers right here in the D.C. region, Sean, who are now unsure of the future of their jobs. This is the Trump administration now offering what they're deeming buyouts in an attempt to trim government spending. Now, federal employees have until Thursday to decide for a deferred resignation, receiving full pay until September 30th. Those who stay risk being transferred or also losing their jobs. Your thoughts on this?
Well, you know, for Trump, it's always about, you know, the explosion of something, right? I mean, this is just cruel. There were so many other ways for the president to be more nuanced in an executive order here. But the chaos, which has really defined his administration so far, is an intended goal of doing these blanket policies that in some ways is meant as a distraction, but in other ways shows that he's willing to go far to put forth his agenda. Many of these workers, you know, they aren't partisan people. They worked in the administration on both sides of the aisle. This abrupt deadline does nothing but put fear in their hearts and many American families across the country. There were other ways, to get at government spending and evaluating it than you know, than being provocative about it. And I think he should have done that. But he's Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, yet again, some 2.2 million people going to be affected by this. I would argue the majority of them based right here in the D.C. region. We're going to move on to President Trump signing an executive order that bans federal funding for gender transition treatments for people under the age of 19. Now, the order directs programs like Medicaid and TRICARE to exclude gender-affirming care for minors, calling for legal action against its use. This was a big talk around town yesterday, Sean.
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you, Guy, compared to the other executive orders signed by the president, I'm less concerned about this one. I mean, the reality of this issue is Americans are divided on this policy, and as evidenced by polling and Trump winning the presidential election, period, on these issues. People are really split. 51% of Americans continue to believe that changing one's gender is morally wrong, and when you go down to under 19 and kids, that 51% goes up significantly. If I were advising any prominent Democrat, I would tell them to keep their powder dry on this issue and focus on kitchen table issues that have real consequences, particularly the ones where Trump has shown rash actions. I'm not as concerned about this one today, Guy.
All right. Well, Sean, we'll wrap up with this, and this is the topic Janae and I touched on earlier. Immigration officers going after violent criminals now in Maryland. So far, officials arrested about 13 people in the state this week. At least one happened to be in Silver Spring. Targets of ICE included those wanted for homicide, armed robbery, and child pornography. We're told 4 of the arrests were considered collateral, along with drug and gun convictions. Bottom line, is this really working?
Guys, too soon to tell what exactly Trump's immigration efforts will lead to. But it's clear that people are paying attention. Right here in the state of Florida, where I am, the Florida legislature is in a special session to tighten immigration laws at the state level in support of President Trump. I mean, they are in contact with him in his office and amending their own ideas based on what the White House wants to do. So it's too early to tell the complete impact, but what is guaranteed, Guy, is that there's a countless number of families across the country who are worried for their friends and their families due to the rhetoric and a lot of signaling by this president.
Sean, you're based in Florida, is that correct?
That's right, Guy.
And so any difference there with regard to what we've seen ICE do, conducting these, let's say, raids, if you will?
No, what's consistent though, Guy, is look at where they're showing up. I mean, they're showing up at Black and Hispanic areas. We haven't seen them show up in Russian or any other demographic, any other group. So it is making people wonder who's making the calls here and what the true meaning of it is.
All right. Well, yet again, Mr. Sean Pittman, Democratic political strategist, joining us right here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Truly appreciate your time, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Guy.